what we've seen now is, I think one of the things that alarmed a lot of folks, even myself covering it, is that we really didn't know much about Derek Chauvin and his own history. We now know after his conviction that he had multiple prior instances of violence against people he was arresting, including kneeling on the neck of a teenager for 17 minutes. So he's got a history. We didn't get to know that, but we went through a lot of information about George Floyd's history. And I say that to you because you also have one of the people who testified for Derek Chauvin, the medical examiner expert that they brought on, who's now having his cases all opened up again from 1992 all the way through 2019 because now there's some question about whether or not he was being fair when he was deciding whether or not police had committed a crime in harming someone. Do you think that Derek Chauvin's cases, any case that he had his hands on, ought to be reopened and reexamined?
Well, it's certainly on the table, right? We're early on yet. We haven't even completed sentencing. But I think that systemic reform that you're pointing to is certainly something that we have got to take into consideration. I mean, you just can't have this many people being killed and injured severely at the hands of law enforcement and not look into the systemic drivers that are here. And I just want to commend Brian Frost, who's the Attorney General in Maryland, who is taking a look at what Dr. David Fowler has been doing over the last few years. This is entirely appropriate. And I think that I look forward to what may be uncovered.
The International Criminal Court is looking at the American criminal justice system and its treatment, particularly of African Americans, and saying that it might be crimes against humanity, that this actually might be something that the international community ought to take a bigger look at in terms of whether there is systemic brutality, even torture, and in short, severe deprivation of physical liberty, persecution, and inhuman acts generally by American law enforcement. Do you agree with that kind of an inquiry?
Yes, I think that if we have nothing to hide, we shouldn't worry about what might be found by the international community. I think it would be wise for the United States criminal justice system to open itself up. But let me just point out, the international community has helped in the area of racial justice in America before. It's largely believed that the Cold War and Cold War competition is what helped drive some of the civil rights movement. As the United States was trying to tell the rest of the world and the emerging decolonized world, hey, join us, we're on the side of democracy. Those same countries, people like Kwame Nkrumah and others could say, wait a minute, I can't buy a cup of coffee in your country. It's others as well, faced racial discrimination. As you know, Nkrumah himself went to an American university. Mm-hmm. So, the international community is relevant in this conversation. And I think that it could only make us better. Yeah, it could only make us better. And I think a little bit of humility toward the rest of the world, understanding, we are the eyes of the world are upon us is important.
Do you think that it is good news, and should attorneys general welcome the idea of the return of pattern and practice investigations from the Department of Justice? Do you think it needs to be re-looked at a federal level, whether some of these police departments are just infused with systemic racism, bias, and brutality?
Without any question, Merrick Garland's announcement of DOJ involvement in Minneapolis and in other places is welcome news. When Jeff Sessions said that he was going to discontinue these consent decrees because of systemic pattern and practice brutality, that actually, I think, accelerated the problem. Together with Trump saying, hey, don't worry about their head when they get in the squad car. Yeah. You will remember that. Yeah. Those things really made everything a lot worse. But I will tell you, Joy, state AG stepped up. Lisa Madigan in Illinois stepped up. Kwame Raoul stepped up. We're trying to do our part as state AGs in the cause of justice.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.